you and I have been in this space with finance, and we've heard the phrase a rich life, right? And it's
Yep.
usually very narrowly focused on the finances. And to a degree, it's appropriate because finances are connected to things and you want to help out. But I feel like what you're doing now over at Find More Balance and the Mental Wealth Show is talking about a rich life in a more holistic sense. You talk about that intersection of high performance and mental health. You had something on your timeline in August 11th this year. You said, I couldn't have written a better story than what's happened these past 2 years.
Yo, so y'all don't know that we were just talking before this show about how I was starting on a book. So for you to even like mention that is crazy. But please do go on.
I've known you for years. We're in the FinCon community. We've talked about personal finance, helping people in the end build their finances, but also a life that they love. But what I've seen in the past 2 years is that you've had an incredible journey on top of that. I know we're going to talk about this a little bit more, talk about your journey with sobriety, your career shift, and you took a sabbatical and you're pursuing something that you had given up years ago. And now you're a gold medalist, you're a champion in track. So I don't know where to start. I'm going to kind of throw that to you. What was the first piece to building this? I mean, let's just call it this rich life.
I'm listening to this and I'm thinking about the book and I'm like, I'm gonna have to incorporate that somewhere. That was so obvious that I didn't even think of it. With my name,
Oh,
just perfect. But for me, the first thing really was making the decision to quit alcohol. So
hmm
July 1st, 2020, that morning, I woke up, I was sitting in my kitchen island, had last night's can of Steel Reserve malt liquor sitting there. I felt the way that I felt many a morning, too many mornings. And I got to this place where I just said, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm
hmm
tired of living this way. I'm starting to look exactly like the person I didn't want to become. And that was like my father. I remember seeing him drink and looking back and reflecting and realizing that he had undiagnosed mental health issues. And I remember the way that he acted and how out of mind he was. And then I thought about a lot of the experiences that I had with alcohol. And I was like, wow, as much as I tried to not be like him, I ended up being just like him. And so there was really a conscious decision to break the cycle. And what I'm realizing now is break a generational cycle.
Yeah.
Because if I don't do that, that doesn't give me what's felt like a year to recover in the traditional sobriety sense. But then also a few months or a year ago, I learned that I had complex PTSD. And so I started the healing
Mm.
journey for that. A lot of these experiences, the alcohol, everything, I went through the first 39 years of my life and had no idea that I carried this complex PTSD from probably the time I was like 5 or 6 years old and never
Wow.
got it addressed. So if I
Yeah.
don't make that decision to quit alcohol, I don't begin the exploration. I don't create the space to be able to get back into track. I don't get back into track. Like I mean, it's just a completely different story. And the story can't begin without me quitting alcohol. I mean, I guess the story has been a traditional story of trial and tribulations, and it does ultimately have a happy ending, but none of this begins without that decision. That was one of the most critical cycles that I needed to break.
Wow. There's a lot to unpack there. And I want to pause because I think this speaks to a lot of people, whether it's alcohol or something else we rely on when we're dealing with something, but we're not really dealing with something, is sometimes in our minds, we think, I'm doing good enough or I'm doing fine because I have a great career or I have this going for me. And there's this myth that things have to be completely falling apart for there to be a problem. But I known you for years before 2020, doing really well successfully, first of all, with paycheck and balances and that work, but then also your day job and your career. I mean, you say you wake up, but that's a huge step, just like to realize this isn't working for me. So how do you go from this is not working for me and knowing that I have to quit drinking?
Well, for me, I was also cognizant of how old I was, and I'm getting to that weird age where I remember my parents at this age when I
Yeah.
was a child,
Yes.
and I'm within, like, a few years of my dad, and I remember him getting diagnosed with diabetes. I remember him had the alcohol problem that he had for years, and I'm thinking about just health issues, things that had started to pop up. And so for me, I just saw it going down a really dark path. And so it felt like for a lot of people, the pandemic was a time for reflection. I think that
Hmm.
was the case for me too. In a way, it worked out that it gave me the much needed time to reflection where actually my drinking spiked because I was just home alone and had to be alone with my thoughts and I wasn't
Hmm.
prepared to handle those thoughts. But it also gave me the time to get to a place where I could make that decision to quit alcohol. So people were like, wow, for a lot of people, the pandemic is what led
Hmm.
to them drinking. For me, the pandemic is what led to me quitting drinking.
Yeah. I think in our culture, it's like, it's not considered a big deal until like now the pandemic's kind of uncovered, like maybe we're masking things when we're drinking, relaxing. I feel like, yeah, like you said, the pandemic shifted certain things. And in your case, it was quitting. So did you just go cold turkey for someone who's thinking, I need to make a change? What was going through your mind? Were you like, okay, I'm just going to try this for a few weeks or whatever?
Thank you for asking that. So it was cold turkey.
Okay.
And what I told the world was that I was just trying dry July
Ah,
because
okay.
I didn't know if I was going to succeed. So I didn't want to make this big declaration of quitting. It's like I knew that I succeed, but I didn't know if I was going to succeed. Like my confidence
Hmm.
still wasn't there yet. Now, I also have the overachiever syndrome. So when I put my mind to something, I
Hmm.
really put my mind to it. Like that's what's led to what people would call a lot of my traditional success. And it's why, even while struggling to still accomplish some of the things that I have, because when I put my mind to something, I really put my mind to something.
Yeah.
And I think at first it was just waking up and not feeling like crap. Like, and I'll be clear, like those first few weeks when you quit, like it's not just like you suddenly just start sleeping well and everything is just like rosy. My sleep was worse than it already was for those first few weeks. But then to be able to start sleeping better and then
Mm.
to not wake up dehydrated. And then because I'm not dehydrated, I can then go work out. And so that's the other thing. With alcohol, I wouldn't work out the way that I wanted to. I didn't eat the
Mhm.
way that I thought that I wanted to. But then once I quit, I didn't have that thing that was the trigger of all the cycles. So for me, I was like, I like this. I like this. Now, there was a period where things felt great. And I think there's a term for it called
Mhm.
like pink clouding, where when you quit, you have this period where, like, I guess the endorphin, everything hits and you feel fantastic. And then you have a crash and you come back down to reality. That part did come too. And that was the
Yeah.
bulk of that first year afterwards, and it wasn't something that I really knew until I looked back at it in retrospect.
Mm.
You know, I don't think I fully grasped until I looked back at the mental health leave that I took, and I had to think, what state was I in when I went on that leave? In fact, I was on
Mhm.
that leave this time a year ago.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so I was thinking about what state I had to be in to go on that leave, and again, coming back to that decision, it's like none of this I don't make that decision for myself even, I
Mhm.
think. I don't make that career pivot in there that you talked about where I moved from program management and internal communications to working in DEI, and I wouldn't have been able to make that because I wouldn't have had the clarity to make that decision. I would have been
Yeah.
stuck in the same cycle that I was in, comfortable but distressed, which is where a lot of us end up.
Yeah. And I know everyone's different, so I don't wanna speak for you. But I know if I was in that situation, you got a job, you do enjoy, you're doing work, it's good enough. That's scary that you're asking for a sabbatical. I know certain companies seem more employee focused, but did you have any like fear, like, I don't know, am I coming back? Or are they going to use that time to find my replacement? I mean, how long was that sabbatical that you requested? How did that process even go? Because that's a huge step for a lot of people. There's a fear underlying that.
So my situation is not going to be the normal situation. I acknowledge that
Mhm.
right away. There are some things I'm privileged to have access to by
Yeah.
working at a large tech company like a Google. I have to
Mhm.
also acknowledge that I've worked hard to get here and it's okay for me to enjoy these things and to not feel bad about these things that I have access to. The thing for me was a lot of it, the hardest part was the mental stuff beforehand. What are people going to think?
Mhm.
Because I had just moved into this retention and progression role in DEI or diversity, equity, and inclusion at Google in April of last year. At this point, we're talking about 2021. It's getting crazy
Yeah.
with all of the times, but I had just moved into that role. And so I'm like, man, I've only been in this role for 5 months, however much time. I'm having panic attacks with my camera off during team meetings and various other meetings. I remember being at another conference, podcast movement, like in tears in my hotel room. And a lot of it was about what other people thought, what other people were going to think. Very little about like how I felt. It was very much about everyone else. And that's something that has gotten me in trouble most of my life. It gets a lot of us in trouble for the bulk of our life. So I felt like I hadn't really got to a place where I was succeeding with this role. I didn't feel like I was especially succeeding or exceeding expectations in my last role. So it was like, I felt like I had something to prove. And really this external focus on what everyone else was going to think, even though I'm the person sitting there having panic attacks in meetings with my camera off. And yeah, I just ultimately got to a place where I said, if I don't do this,
Mhm.
going to have consequences. What really helped me with being able to take the leave was seeing my manager at the time take a leave and then seeing someone
Oh.
else on my team take a leave. And so I remember saying to myself, if they can create space, if they can take leave and it's okay, then it should be okay for me to take care of myself. So I had to be empowered and enabled to make that decision.
Did you have a set time in mind? Like, I need to at least have this time off, or was it more of you had to have the conversation to figure out how much time they would give you for someone who's thinking this might be something they should do for their own mental health?
I got some fantastic advice, and that was take more time than you think that you'll need.
Okay.
Because at first I said, I think I need a month. And then someone gave me that advice and I was like, I think I need 6 weeks. That 6 weeks then turned into 12 to 13 weeks. What a lot of people don't know is when people say that they're taking mental health leave, oftentimes that's a short term disability leave. But people don't think of mental health and the
Mm,
related issues necessarily as a disability because people traditionally associate that with like factory jobs, hurting your back. I also went through that too. When I found out that it was
mhm.
short term disability, I freaked out a bit. I was like, wait, I was like, oh, I can walk, I can function. Am I
Yeah.
going to be lying? But then I'm like, wait, I learned I have complex PTSD and I've had anxiety for quite some time and I have ADHD. And these things do actually make it really, really difficult for me to do my job. Once I
Yeah.
got over that mental hump, I submitted it. And this is all online via internal systems, but it was a pretty seamless process. And it worked out that the part that I'm most thankful for is that I was 100% paid through that time.
Wow. That
So
is fantastic.
I believe it was like 65% was covered by the short-term disability insurance for up to 13 weeks. I think that's the standard of how short-term disability works. But
Mhm.
then Google makes up the difference for up to 13 weeks. So they'll pay the other 35% or whatever it is to bring you
Yeah.
to 100% of pay. I think some other state benefit is in there as well in California. So having that space, having 13 weeks, and the thing is,
Yeah.
when I went out on that leave, I thought that I felt the way that I did because I needed to leave corporate America and because I needed to go jump into entrepreneurship. So when I took that leave, I thought I was taking that leave because I was going to exit altogether. And this was my time
Mm.
to relax and work on my exit plan. But it turned out that that was not it. This was really my time to begin healing, to begin doing the healing that I didn't even know that I needed to do.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. There's a couple key takeaways I definitely want to highlight because you have a lot of gems in there. First of all, it's great that Google offers that. And I know a lot of tech companies do have benefits like that. For those listening, if you are in a position where you have these resources, the first thing I would say is I don't think we take advantage of them. And I'm not saying as a selfish taking advantage, but if you have the resources to allow you to be your best self, which in turn could help you be a better, more productive worker. It's not a great phrase, but I'll just say give yourself permission
Yes.
to take what you need to be better, to be whole again. We all have something we need to work on. And that is fantastic that you did that. You took it. I think that needs to be mentioned and highlighted just a little bit. But then, too, I'm curious. I know a little bit about the story, but I want to find out more. This was a on the internet story. You quit and you completely leave corporate America to start your entrepreneurship. But I saw that you were on the fence and there were some signs of what you needed to do or what you would want to do that led to track. Could you kind of get into that?
Yeah. So the track thing was
Yeah.
interesting. So at 1 year of alcohol sobriety, so July 1st, 2021,
Hmm.
as a celebration of that and finally having the space in my life, I committed to getting back into track and field after 15 plus years off.
Wow.
And it was something I never thought that I would do again. I remember going to a local track. I brought my old spikes, July 1st, 2021. I got my little camera set up. I recorded this. It's probably one of the few Instagram lives that I've done, but I'm in tears sitting there. I still go back and watch it every now and then just to see how far I've come. But I'm sitting there in tears, holding the spikes, doing something that I thought about literally every day, at least once for the past 15 years, just because of how my last career in college ended. I have a picture where it's me and a few other seniors. Oh, I wish I had that picture in front of me now. It's a picture of me and a few other seniors. And you see me with, so everyone else is smiling and looks happy. And then you see me with a hood up and you can barely see my
Hmm.
face. And it helped me see like where I was at the time. But then I also remembered that I went out basically injured my last meet in college. It was just kind of
Oh.
like a fizzle, went out with a whimper. And so that stuck with me. And plus, even the alcohol things were going on like way back then. So to be able to like get a second chance, I am no way as fast or as strong as I was when I was 21. But to have a second chance to be able to do it and to do it high level, I couldn't pass that up. And this really it's interesting how track actually led to me seeing the value of going back to work, which was crazy.
Yeah.
Because while I was on leave, once I got through a lot of the painful portion of the leave, which was probably the first 6 weeks before I got to a place of normalcy, that's when I started to be like, what do I want my day to look like? How do I want to spend my time? And a lot of it revolved around me essentially partaking in healthy habits so that I could get ready for the season. And when it got time to think about going back to work, I was debating, do I go back? Do I not go back? These benefits, like it's been nice to be 100% paid and not have to like worry about a lot of other stuff. Like these benefits in themselves are real, like just being able to take
Mhm.
that leave in itself, like tremendous value to the benefits. But then I got close to going back to work and I went on site at my job for a doctor's appointment. When I left that doctor's appointment, I went upstairs in that building to check out the gym.
Mhm.
And I said, this gym has everything I need for my track and field workouts, and it's free.
Mm.
It's included. Then on the way out of the building, I stopped in the cafeteria to get breakfast. And I'm like, I have access to covered, paid for breakfast, lunch, and dinner throughout the week. So I don't have to think about why would I leave? Why would I leave? And when I went back, I knew how I didn't want to feel. So the other thing I pledged was that I'll never feel the way that I felt when I went out. I was very clear about with my boss about my boundaries, the projects that I wanted to
Yeah.
work on, things like that. I'm having the best stretch of my career that I've ever had at this very moment. And that all came from that realization with track, like work was actually helping me achieve a life dream. It completely changed the way that I thought about work.
Yeah.
Like it's helping me achieve a goal. And so now my thing is, how can I make work serve me? That's what I say to people. How can you make work serve you beyond just the job title, beyond just the money? What is it allowing you to do in life that's important to you?
What I appreciate what you're speaking is with work, let's just talk about the whole boundaries thing and how you see work. Again, we've been in the personal finance space and we're all always talking about side hustles or do you have a hobby that can make you money? And they have their place, but you can't ignore that you need to have your own joy, whether that's, in your case, it's track and field. Some people create music, writing, whatever it is. Make sure you have the space for it. But then, like you were saying, even taking a 9 to 5 career that people usually associate with just being a chore and
The rat
making it work
race.
for you. Yeah, the rat race, but you're making it work for you and good for you for also the boundaries. There's like so many different pieces, but I think that also needs to be said. Is sometimes we're afraid to speak, but we need to for our own mental health, our own emotional health, so we can be productive. Because I know you specialize with like high performers and you've done an incredible job with your career. But part of that is to avoid the burnout, you have to kind of refresh yourself, recharge yourself, however that looks for you. Oh my goodness, Rich, there's so much to do. No, we just scratched the surface and you have so many great resources. So I want to make sure we give the space for anyone listening. They're starting their journey, whatever habit they want to change, whatever transformation they want to make. How can they reach out to you and listen to the podcast and everything?
Yes. So this has been fantastic. And I know we could talk for hours, but all good things must come to an end. So you can find me on Instagram and Twitter, if it still exists, at Rich Runs Track. But you could find the podcast, The Mental Wealth Show, on any of your favorite podcast players. And you can also find everything else at findmorebalance.com.